You can spend an entire day surrounded by people and still feel completely alone. And maybe that's what makes loneliness so confusing. Because loneliness is not always the absence of people. Sometimes it's the absence of connection, the absence of peace with yourself. Most people are not afraid of being alone physically. They are afraid of what appears in the silence when distraction disappears. No notifications, no conversations, no scrolling, no noise, just you. And for many people, that feels unbearable. Modern life has made this even worse. We are constantly stimulated, constantly connected, constantly consuming. Yet anxiety, emotional emptiness, and loneliness continue to grow everywhere. Which raises an uncomfortable question. What if the real fear is not loneliness, but facing ourselves without distraction? Tonight, I want to explore loneliness through Buddhist philosophy and modern psychology, not as something shameful, but as something deeply human. Because maybe solitude is not punishment. Maybe it is where understanding begins. You may know this feeling, reaching for your phone the second silence appears, keeping background noise on constantly, staying busy because slowing down feels uncomfortable, wanting someone beside you, not always because you love them, but because being alone with your thoughts feels heavier. A lot of people quietly fear solitude, but they rarely admit it. So, instead, they distract themselves endlessly. Social media, work, relationships, entertainment, constant stimulation, and none of these things are inherently bad. The problem begins when distraction becomes escape. Psychology shows that many people experience discomfort in silence because unprocessed emotions surface when external stimulation fades. Suddenly, the mind becomes loud. Regrets appear, anxiety appears, insecurity appears, questions appear. Am I enough? Why do I feel disconnected? Why do I need constant attention to feel okay? Buddhism understood this long ago. The mind avoids stillness because stillness reveals attachment. But what if loneliness is not always an enemy? What if solitude is actually trying to teach you something? Buddhism does not see silence as emptiness. It sees silence as clarity, because when distraction disappears, awareness becomes possible. For the first time, you begin noticing your patterns, your fears, your emotional dependencies, your need for validation, your attachment to being wanted. Solitude becomes a mirror, and mirrors can feel uncomfortable before they become healing. Modern psychology actually supports this idea. Studies show that people who develop comfort with solitude often experience greater emotional regulation, stronger self-awareness, improved creativity, and deeper internal stability. In other words, peace grows when your emotional state stops depending entirely on external attention. That's a powerful transformation. Here's the gap most people never notice. They want inner peace, but avoid inner stillness. They want deeper connection, but feel disconnected from themselves. They want love, but fear being alone so intensely that they attach themselves to anyone who temporarily removes the discomfort. This is why some relationships become emotional dependency instead of love. Loneliness creates panic. Panic creates attachment. Attachment creates suffering. Buddhism teaches that attachment often comes from misunderstanding where peace actually comes from. Many people unconsciously believe, once I find the right person, I will finally feel whole. But no human being can permanently silence inner emptiness for another person, because eventually silence returns, and when it does, you meet yourself again. But something changes when you stop running from solitude. Slowly, being alone stops feeling like abandonment and starts feeling like space. Space to breathe, space to think clearly, space to heal, space to exist without performance. You begin realizing loneliness and solitude are not the same thing. Loneliness says, I am incomplete. Solitude says, I am learning to be with myself. That shift changes everything, because now your worth is no longer measured entirely by who texts you back, who validates you, or who chooses you. Inner stability begins forming quietly. And ironically, people who become comfortable alone often build healthier relationships because they stop relating through fear. They stop clinging. They beg life not to leave them. There's a Buddhist teaching that says, wherever you go, there you are. Meaning, no matter how many distractions surround you, you cannot permanently escape yourself. This is why external stimulation eventually loses its effect. Temporary distraction is not lasting peace. And psychology confirms this. Constant dopamine stimulation, scrolling, entertainment, validation loops conditions the brain to avoid stillness, which makes silence feel emotionally threatening. But Buddhism invites the opposite practice. Sit quietly, observe the mind, notice the discomfort without escaping immediately. This is the foundation of mindfulness, not becoming emotionless, but becoming aware without reacting automatically. There's also an old Buddhist image of muddy water. If you keep stirring water constantly, it remains cloudy. But if you allow it to become still, clarity returns naturally. The human mind works similarly. Many people are mentally exhausted not because life is impossible, but because the mind never stops stirring itself. Maybe the fear of being alone is really the fear of meeting parts of ourselves we've ignored for too long. But maybe healing begins there too, in the silence, in the stillness, in the moments where there is nothing left to distract you from your own mind. Because eventually, you stop seeing solitude as emptiness and start seeing it as freedom. Freedom from constant performance, freedom from chasing validation endlessly, freedom from needing noise every second to avoid discomfort. And maybe that's why so many spiritual traditions value silence, because silence reveals what distraction hides. One of the strangest things about modern life is that people have never been more connected digitally, yet many have never felt more emotionally disconnected internally. We wake up and immediately reach for stimulation, notifications, messages, videos, music, podcasts, endless scrolling. Silence has almost disappeared from daily life. And maybe that is part of the problem. Because when the mind never rests, it never truly understands itself. Buddhism teaches that the restless mind continuously searches outside itself for relief, more attention, more validation, more entertainment, more achievement. But the relief never lasts very long, which creates a cycle. Temporary comfort followed by emptiness again. Psychology describes this as the dopamine reward loop. The brain becomes conditioned to seek stimulation constantly, and over time, stillness begins to feel unnatural. Some people are no longer uncomfortable because something is wrong. They are uncomfortable simply because nothing is happening. Think about how rare it is now to sit quietly without reaching for a screen. Even small moments of waiting feel unbearable. Elevators, traffic lights, waiting rooms. People immediately escape into distraction. But Buddhism asks something radical. What if the discomfort you keep escaping contains the wisdom you most need to hear?
So why do we attach to people so quickly? Loneliness also explains why many people become emotionally attached very quickly. Not necessarily because they deeply know someone, but because the attention temporarily softens the emptiness. This is incredibly human. Most people do not want to feel invisible. They want reassurance that they matter, that they are wanted, that they are not alone in the world. But when loneliness becomes intense, relationships can quietly become emotional survival strategies. Psychology calls this anxious attachment. The fear of abandonment becomes so strong that people begin clinging tightly to connection, overanalyzing messages, seeking constant reassurance, feeling panic when attention changes. And Buddhism would say, suffering increases the moment peace depends entirely on external conditions. Because people change, emotions change, relationships change. Nothing external remains perfectly stable forever. Which means if your sense of worth is built entirely on external validation, your emotional state will always feel fragile. This is why learning solitude matters. Solitude teaches emotional grounding, not isolation, not avoidance, but the ability to remain internally steady even when life changes around you. Sometimes loneliness feels frightening because it removes performance. Around other people you can play roles, productive, funny, attractive, successful, distracted. But solitude removes the audience, and then an uncomfortable question appears. Who am I when nobody is watching? That question can shake people deeply, because many identities are built around external recognition, titles, social status, relationships, approval, achievement. But Buddhism repeatedly teaches that identity itself is unstable. The self is constantly changing, which means clinging too tightly to any identity creates suffering eventually. This is why losing a relationship or a career or social approval can feel like losing yourself entirely, because unconsciously the mind fused identity with external conditions. Modern psychology calls this identity attachment. Buddhism simply observed the emotional consequences long ago. And maybe solitude becomes transformative because it slowly separates your existence from performance. You begin realizing you do not need to constantly prove your worth to deserve peace. Most people were never taught how to sit with difficult emotions. They were taught how to suppress them, escape them, distract themselves from them, or numb them. But emotions ignored do not disappear, they wait, and silence often brings them back to the surface. This is why solitude can initially feel overwhelming. Old grief returns, regret returns, fear returns. But Buddhism teaches something incredibly compassionate. Emotions become less frightening when observed without resistance. Imagine waves in the ocean. They rise, they fall. None remain forever. Emotions behave similarly. Anxiety feels permanent while you are trapped inside it. But mindfulness creates distance. You begin noticing, this is sadness, this is fear, this is loneliness, instead of, this is who I am. That distinction matters deeply, because once emotions stop defining your identity, they lose some of their power over you. And slowly, the mind becomes less reactive, less afraid, less desperate to escape itself. There is a quiet kind of freedom that appears when you no longer fear being alone. Your decisions become clearer, your relationships become healthier, your mind becomes calmer, because now you are no longer chasing distraction to avoid yourself. You begin appreciating simple things again: silence, morning light, slow walks, breathing deeply, moments without stimulation. Buddhism often emphasizes simplicity because simplicity creates space for awareness, and awareness changes how you experience life entirely. You stop rushing constantly, stop needing every moment to be filled, stop panicking in silence. Solitude becomes less like emptiness and more like returning home internally. Not because loneliness disappears forever, but because fear loosens its grip. You begin understanding peace is not something other people permanently give you. It is something slowly cultivated within yourself. And perhaps that is one of the deepest forms of freedom a human being can experience: the ability to sit quietly with themselves without needing to run away.
If you are struggling with loneliness right now, this is important to remember. Being alone does not mean being broken. Sometimes solitude is where your deepest understanding begins. Not all emptiness is bad. Some emptiness creates space for clarity, space for healing, space for peace. Maybe the goal is not to eliminate loneliness completely. Maybe the goal is learning how to sit with yourself gently, without fear. Because the relationship you have with your own mind shapes every other relationship in your life. And perhaps real inner peace begins the moment you no longer need constant distraction to escape yourself. Thank you for spending this time here. And if this conversation resonated with you, tell us in the comments, what does being alone feel like to you? Is it peaceful or uncomfortable? And what do you think that feeling is trying to teach you?